Symposium, Post-Soviet Television, Global Formats and Russian Power. On behalf of the conference organizers, I would like to thank, first of all, the faculty and our wonderful and hardworking students without whom this event would be impossible. Can you please get up, guys? The organizing committee, yes, all right. Thank you. Yeah, some of them are wearing our signature t-shirts, so it's very red. Yet not Soviet, post-Soviet. All right. The support for this conference was provided, and generous support, by the Reeves Center for International Studies, the Charles Center, the Cultural and Film Studies program, and finally, the College of Arts and Sciences. We hope you can join us tomorrow for our screening of the documentary 211 Anna. Hopefully not 2000. 211 stands for the number of journalists killed in Russia since the end of the Soviet Union. The screening will be in McLaughlin 20. Okay, so we hope to see you there. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker of this symposium, Professor Stephen Hutchings. Professor Hutchings is a professor of Russian Studies at the University of Manchester, the United Kingdom. He is the president of the British Association for Slavonic and East European Studies, and is on editorial boards of scholarly journals in Russian studies. He is a leading authority on Russian media, especially on television. In addition to numerous articles, he authored 3 books and produced 4 edited volumes, many of them, in fact, dealing with the topic of this conference, that is post-Soviet television and film as well. His research and teaching interests range from Russian literary modernism to literary adaptations, that is, screen adaptations of literature and television news coverage. In 2009, he published 2 books that specifically deal with the topic of our symposium, Television and Culture in Putin's Russia, Remote Control, and an edited volume, Media and Power in Post-Soviet Russia, Conflicting Messages. He's currently working on a 3-year project, European Television Representations of Islam as Security Threat, a comparative study of Russia, France, and the UK. And after the talk, we'll hold a Q&A session. Please join us for that. Finally, let me introduce and please help me welcome Professor Stephen Hutchings.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for inviting me, Jana. I'm very pleased to be here. I'm a notoriously bad traveller. In fact, we've just exchanged stories with some colleagues about horror stories and flights, and I seem to suffer these more than most. I really don't like travelling, particularly flying, and I try to avoid it like the plague. But when I was invited to this event and seeing the topic, I knew I couldn't refuse. So, I really am very pleased to be here. And just in case you were wondering, my flight was completely unproblematic. Right here on time. It's also nice and reassuring to see some familiar faces in the audience, some old friends. Lots and lots of new, young and unfamiliar faces. And I hope to perhaps get to know some of you at dinner tonight, perhaps. That's if you're still all awake. And as Lena kindly said, I've worked for some years on topics very close to the theme of the symposium. And what I'm going to do today is actually represents the very early fruits of a brand new project that actually supersedes the one that you mentioned, and is an exploration of Russian television news coverage of interethnic cohesion issues in modern Russia. And I'm going to be talking about the serial Shkola, which, how many of you have seen any of the Shkola? Good. Well, that's
The beginning.
it's a start. Yes. So this is a lesson then, isn't it? A lesson on Szkoła. And if all else fails, I do have plenty of clips to show you. I wasn't quite sure how to pitch this lecture, and I'm trying to make it so there's a little bit for everyone. So there's some clips and some slides, and hopefully the topic is sort of inherently interesting enough for all of you to get something out of it. And there is, I'm afraid, a little bit of theory as well. But I'll signal very carefully when that comes. The off button and switch back on again. Well. National parliaments don't often get to debate television serials, at least not where I come from. Such, however, was the controversy and the scandal surrounding Valeria Guy Germanica's 69-part Szkoła, which was shown on Russia's Channel 1 in 2010, officially designated Year of the Teacher, return, that it was almost banned by the State Duma. Now, in a post-totalitarian society beset by intergenerational culture clash, ethnic and other tensions, the promotion of cohesion is paramount, and I only have to refer to the horrifying race riots in Moscow just before Christmas to make that point. What I'm going to do today is to question the assumption that Szkoła necessarily harmed that cause, challenging conventional wisdom about the relationship between Russian media, state and society. So those of you who don't know the serial, it was filmed throughout with handheld camera, and it explored the multiple problems afflicting Russian secondary schools. Casual sex, teenage pregnancy, drug taking, bullying, racism, corrupt, ineffectual teachers, to name but a few. Now, this was, of course, not the very first time that a serial had generated controversy in Russia. It was preceded by a storm of protest in 2006 surrounding the NTV prison serial Zorna, whose depiction of a prison system rife with corruption, arbitrary beatings, homophobic violence, and heroin addiction led to its being removed from its primetime slot. Like Szkoła, which I'm going to talk about today, the shock that it generated reflected its claims to authenticity. It was supposedly based on a manuscript smuggled out of a provincial jail, a real manuscript. And like Szkoła, it became a national phenomenon, sparking debates conducted in online forums by an audience which divided into mutually hostile camps of supporters and detractors. And those of you who read my book will remember a brief discussion of that serial there. Both dramas evaded somehow the worst excesses of Putin's media clampdown. Both adopt the multi-episode serial or telenovela format. Both acquire some of the attributes of reality television. And both are characterized by their institutional setting, with its capacity for representing private life's encounter with the public sphere. So, institutional serials feature professionals who are working during the daytime and then go home at night, and we experience their lives at home in privacy. But it's Szkoła in which the national cohesion theme surfaces most prominently. I'm going to focus on that theme against the background of some other features which unite it with its predecessor, tying them to the format that they share. And this is why I'm going to make a pitch to the theme of the symposium. So now the little bit of theory, and I'll tell you when I've finished. The argument that I'm going to make rests on the long serial's capacity to foster national cohesion through a dialectic of centre and periphery. And as before, I'm invoking Jesus Martin Barbaro's account of that dialectic, tracing a mutual engagement of voices: official patriotic, Soviet nostalgic, nationalist, liberal, vernacular racist, in which each contaminates the other. Now, Barbaro's interest in the serial dialectic reflects the way in which it captures the split logic, as he calls it, of capitalist democracy, which must facilitate protests against the iniquities it generates, yet also contain them within a unified societal consensus. Barbaro's neo-Gramscian approach posits hegemony as the achievement of power through appropriation of the definition of what passes for common sense. So you can master and hold prevalence over what passes as common sense, then you have control, you have power, you have hegemony. In the appropriation process, culture becomes what he calls the strategic battlefield in the struggle to define the terms of the conflict, because, again in Barbaro's words, there is no hegemony nor counter-hegemony without cultural circulation. No imposition from above which does not imply an incorporation of what comes from below. End of quote. Mass culture, in his view, especially the media, is central to that conflict and, quote, to think of mass culture in terms of hegemony implies a double rupture. A break with technological positivism, which reduces communication to a problem of media, and a break with cultural ethnocentrism, which identifies mass culture with the degradation of culture. The toing and froing which the dialectical process designates mirrors what Barbaro terms the serial narrative's provocation-pacification dynamics, enabling it to stir people up and denounce the atrocious contradictions of society, in other words, to provoke, but in the same process to resolve those problems without moving people to action, in other words, to pacify. So in its open-endedness, it's identified. Its open-endedness is identified with its authenticizing and provocative tendency to incorporate and highlight social conflict. But its eventual need to conclude provides the pacification dimension, enabling it to ameliorate public anxiety and to consolidate the hegemonic process. So that, as I say, is my pitch to the conference theme. It's here too that we encounter the serial's long-standing association with melodrama, which translates gritty everyday tribulations into climactic plots, recodes anonymous social process as intimate family drama, an intimacy which transfers to the viewer-character relationship, and mythologizes collective trauma as conflict between alternatively heroicized and demonized individuals. Going back to that sort of intimacy of viewer-character relationship, I was talking to Lena, I think it was over coffee, about how the serial has this unique capacity to engage you, and because you watch it over such a long period of time, you know, you get to know the characters, and when the serial's over, you feel a sense of loss, a gap, an absence in your life, and there's something unique about the serial that enables it to do that. Now, this emphasis on intimacy and emotionality has allied melodrama with feminine sensibilities, a propensity confirmed in the escapist narrative embraced by the Latin American telenovela, so popular amongst hard-pressed Russian viewers of the 1990s, and typically revolving around the thwarted urban aspirations of a poor girl from the rural provinces. Bagatia Tvorja Plačut is perhaps the most famous, Trapikanka was another, and of course Moja Prekrasna Nyanya, which I believe some of you are familiar with, also borrows from that format. Now, despite its harsh masculine aesthetics, Szkoła too betrays melodramatic influences, adopting the viewpoint of its female pupils, many of whom are the victims of unscrupulous adolescent boys.